Revelation 2297. From the 11th of April 1942. Freedom of the will. Last grace. Proclaiming the divine word. People still move in the freedom of their will. They can still be active using their vitality and gather the goods they desire, and this is a grace from God which they cannot yet fully grasp. They can shape their future entirely at their own discretion, and thus they create their own fate for eternity, either freedom of spirit or the opposite, renewed imprisonment of that which already possessed a certain freedom. And people live along without any sense of responsibility. And even if it is preached to them again and again, they do not heed such words because they do not believe it. They do not use their freedom of will for the soul's higher development, and this is a spiritual regression which will be severely punished after the human being's demise. And thus, since the human being misuses the freedom of the spirit or does not use it properly, his soul enters the state of bondage again. It has to move according to God's will. It has to move according to God's will again through endless times so that it feels the agony of the bound will and longs for its freedom again. The spiritual substance in the human being was originally created free and will always long for this original state. But as long as the resistance against God, that is one's own lack of love, is still so great, the will for freedom is also only slight in the being and can only be awakened or strengthened through pressure and coercion from outside. That is why there is no other possibility for the being to ascend than the agonizing walk through the works of creation in bound will. For only when the being desires freedom out of itself does the will in it also become active, and only then does the ascent to ascent begin. For only then can light and strength be supplied to it through which it can attain freedom of spirit. But the human race of the present time no longer respects its freedom and therefore does not use it either. And therefore it also forfeits its right to live on earth because it ignores a grace of God. Thus it is by no means an act of injustice if people's stay on earth is shortened or completely taken away from them, for they would not have it any other way, which they openly demonstrate by abusing their free will. Yet God still allows a short period of grace to follow his last admonition, and people who make extensive use of this period of grace can let their free will become active by living in accordance with the divine commandments and submitting their free will to God, thus giving up their former resistance against God. And therefore the divine teaching of love has to be brought home to people in this short time. They have to be urgently informed once again of the dreadful consequences of a wrongly conducted earthly way of life. They must be preached God's love and his constant care for his living creations which, however, also requires a will turned towards him in order to have the corresponding effect. And therefore this time is particularly important for the spreading of the divine word, the observance of which shall be urgently taught to them so that it can become effective. And this is the last time of grace which precedes the last judgment and therefore cannot be taken seriously enough. Amen.